Easy E, how are we?
Johnny, I know what you're going to say. I'm looking lighter because I am. Woo! 4 kilos down in 25 days.
Yeah, I'm just cold right now after having this week's guest on the podcast. That's all I'm thinking of right now. I'm actually shivering at just trying to imagine myself jumping into an ice bath, but yet curious. And that is the biggest compliment I give this week's guest on the podcast. I am curious because there's a lot of little tips and just a little nuggets of advice. I'm like, if I do this, it could be manageable to be in an ice bath for 2 minutes. And that's something I never thought I'd say 45 minutes to an hour ago. But Eric, who do we have in this podcast who has actually had me thinking somewhat positively about ice baths and even a cold shower?
Yeah, this week, rather than listening to me crap on about my weight loss regime, it is better to have Karen O'Reilly's on with us this week. Karen's the owner of Sealieve.ie. We'll put it in the show notes, but basically has her own business selling ice baths and thermal wear. She's going to be doing breathing techniques, which we talk about a little bit in the podcast. But more importantly, she was on to give us an education. And what the next 45 minutes will be, hopefully for most, is an education. Me and you did even the research. We looked into things beforehand. We're like, right, we'll have questions on this, this, and this. We didn't. We just got everything so nicely explained, so calmly that I'm not going to lie, I'm thinking about a sea swim on the weekend.
Wow.
It is. And it's one of those things, like we're talking about the 75-day challenge, and I talked about yoga and how much that would be beneficial to overall recovery and overall me and better me. And now I'm kind of raging. I didn't consider, cold water therapy as part of that and as part of a real challenge. And forget about the 30 minutes of doing it. It's like, if I can even get in and do the small little nuggets of cold water therapy, that's positive development. And listen, this intro will not even do this episode justice. It is absolutely a great listen. Karen is absolutely fantastic. And I think a lot of people are going to get a lot from this episode.
With that said, let's go with this week's episode of the Any Given Monday podcast. Eric, after last week's podcast episode, I know all the great stuff Lorcan did and 12 Ironmans, and people are probably very impressed with that. I still don't know if he got into cold water in the middle of December. Like, the idea of doing that is absolutely baffling to me. I know he talked about some of the benefits briefly, but I need to know more. And a couple of weeks ago, we did an episode on this. The listeners, our downloads were actually a big jump when we talked about ice baths and stuff. And we didn't really know 100% what we're talking about, just what we heard in the podcast. So we need more info on this one.
Yeah, well, I've done more research on Lorcan after training with him for the last few days. I think he's just missing a few screws, to be honest. But, Sean, as we talk a lot, but we like to back it up. And this week we've got a great guest, and we have Karen O'Reilly with us today. Karen, you are very welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Good, thanks a million, lads. Delighted now to be on.
Karen, you remind me of Lorcan in that I saw a video of your Instagram, and the weather was that bad that most of the video you can only hear the wind in it. It was January, it was -2 degrees, and you hopped into your ice bath. How? Like, I know physically how. I saw physically how you hopped in, but just, yeah, we'll start with how, and we'll take the conversation from there, Karen.
Well, so my favorite months actually to do it are December, January, because I love those ridiculous conditions. So they were some of my favorite ones, but I was never into cold therapy, actually. Like, for years, I would never go in the sea if we went to the beach, even in the summer. But about 6 years ago, I got into doing cold shots, at the end of your shower.
Yeah.
After, we have 3 kids, and at the time we had 2. One was 6 months old. So I was in the middle of that deep brain fog, utter fatigue, total misery, looking for anything, literally anything that would kind of lift the fog. And I read about cold therapy, whatever. So I only ever got to cold showers. That was it. And I did that for about, I'd say 4 years maybe. And then a friend of mine about 2 years ago came down to us. We go to a place in Wexford, and she was like, why do you not go sea swimming? And I was like, no, it's not really my bag. And then she was like, you are insane. She comes from Clare. She's always in the sea. So we went in for a dip, and it was like one of those moments where as soon as I did that one, I was like, why have I not been doing this? This is mental. purely because it switches me on mentally. Like for me, getting into the ice bath has always been about the mental side.
Right.
It's funny. It's great that you say that, because Lorcan last week said the exact same thing, and it's nice to have you on as kind of the verification of it, because he says you feel alive. You are never more awake. You are never more alive than that instant where you get in that water. And is that the feeling? It's kind of like that cross the finish line from a run feeling, that high. Is that what opens you up, that feeling of being alive?
Like 100%. And like I think sometimes people think when I put up the videos or if I'm talking after, like you can be in it and it's misery. It's grim. You can be that's 100% fact. There's no question. But I actually have started to enjoy that feeling. Because you're endurance athletes. Like when you get into those longer, that, when you're over an hour and a half running and you're in that mode, it's nearly the misery of it that's pushing you on. Like, the fact that you're like, I'm still doing this, like I'm still in this now. But like that, once you get out and do your movement and warm up and all the rest of it, it just changes the entire day for me. Like it's like an on switch. That's the way I always think about it.
But you do running and stuff as well. And it's like you went hiking. Did you do Kilimanjaro last year?
Yeah, last
so
September.
You're a very active person, obviously, to do something like that. And yet you're jumping to ice baths first thing in the morning. Is it a different high or feeling you're getting, or is it just that's a 5-6 minutes start the day? You're not going to have time for a 2-hour run, and or is it different to hop into the ice bath first thing?
So that's really good, because now we know from more recent science that there's an order to doing the ice bath if you're doing it as part of your recovery. But if you do it first thing in the morning, I think is the absolute maximum benefit, because everything mentally is switched on. Like you are as alert, as focused. Like Lorcan was saying, you couldn't feel more alive. Like 20 cups of coffee wouldn't make you feel as you feel when you get out of the bath. But if you're doing it as part of training, there's a slightly different protocol you should do. So say if I want to do a long run and I only had time in the morning to do a long run, then I'd have to leave a gap of maybe 7-8 hours before I do the ice bath. So you either do it as roll out of bed, straight in the ice bath, then do your training, or leave a gap, because you can actually lessen the amount of gains you'll make, especially if you're strength training. Before it used to be do a really tough session, jump in an ice bath. Now we know if you want to absolutely maximize your benefits from it, do it the very first thing.
That's an interesting point, because we have said before in the podcast, and we are wrong. We've been wrong about a lot of things, in that if you're doing multiple sports like strength training and stuff in the morning, that maybe a good idea would be an ice bath straight away. So 3-4 hours, you're more recovered. But then seemingly it's something to do with inflammation, especially with hypertrophy, that like
exactly
it's great for 3-4 hours afterwards. Hop in to the ice bath for recovery. Then for if you're going to go for your long cycle or stuff in the evening, especially doing sessions on the weekend, your longer work towards something like an Ironman that Eric may be doing.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you can, if you alternate the two, the heat and the cold, I always think that's your opportunity then to do a bit of heat.
Okay.
So rather than, saying, well, I can't do, we're all busy. So do you have the time if you're strength training in the morning and you want to do a cycle in the evening, and then where are you fitting it in? You're back from work, all those things. You can do, like cold therapy will affect your sleep if you do it too late in the evening. Now, some people don't have that issue, but in general, it's supposed to, wake your body up. So the later you do it.
They're the same lunatics that drink coffee before bed and have 8 hours. I don't
get
that.
See the same.
Like, I'm the most stimulant sensitive person in the world. Like I have a little bit of chocolate and I'm wired, so I definitely can't do them late. But you could do your heat therapy late. You could do that at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Like
the protocol is there for that now in my mind, just because the idea of a cold water thing is still bananas to me. Even though I'm coming around to listen to you guys more, I would feel like do something cold and then hop into a sauna and stuff afterwards. Is there protocol there for that? Is it heat first and cold, or does it matter? Do you know? Or
so you definitely should always end on cold. If you're going to a barrel sauna and you're jumping in the sea and then you're back to the barrel sauna, you always get back in the sea or have a cold shower or whatever it is at the end, because that's how you maximize the metabolic effect. So essentially what's happening is, and this came up in 2021 is the most recent research on exactly what happens physiologically when you do cold therapy. So it was done on like a group of winter swimmers in Denmark, really fit lads who would swim all the time. So they're used to really cold temperatures. And one of the things they found was that they have a lot more brown fat on their bodies. So, you know, the difference between brown and white fat is just that the brown fat has, you know, the mitochondria, which are like the powerhouse of the cell. So that does all the work, produces heat. So basically what's happening is your brown fat cells are what trigger your body to heat up, how your body thermoregulates itself. And the more brown fat cells you have, the more efficient your body is at producing heat, which means you're burning more calories. So it is something that helps you to lose weight or maintain weight, as long as you're ending those sessions with your body cold. It's not that it's going to be ineffective, like you're definitely going to have that effect, but the longer you can stay cold and let your body be the one that's doing all the work to heat you back up, you're maximizing those metabolic benefits, we'll say.
And it's something that we always talk about in terms of lifting weights. Muscle mass eats calories, but what we're talking about, the thermogenesis, the body trying to maintain its own core temperature, needs to work harder to do that, so you burn more calories. If you want to look at it like that, it's you're getting the extra little croissant that you've had afterwards, or you know, whatever it is that sells it for people. That's what you're doing for your body to try and maintain its core temperature.
100%. And actually, that's a good point, because I always think of it like, I think some people either will do something because they can, you know, gradually get better at it, or some people do it just because there's a certain amount of pleasure or some kind of output from it. I always think of when I get into the ice bath, it is like a challenge. So I look at it like a workout. I'd be thinking of it like, okay, I know once I hit now 3 minutes, that's my metabolic rate has gone up now like 250%.
My God.
If I go in it for between 5 to 10 minutes, now I've got this massive dopamine hit that's going to change how I feel for the entire day. So if you start off, say, with cold showers, and then you want to gradually go towards maybe sea swims or the ice bath, say, it's like that sort of training. You know, if you think about it like any sort of training, you have to start somewhere and you'll gradually build it up. But I think it's a good idea to have like some sort of marker in your head to be able to say, well, now I did 2 minutes today. I know that means X, Y, Z, you know. If I can build it gradually up to 5 minutes, I have all of the benefits in the bag.
As a minimum effective dose for a whipping yourself a cold. Are you saying then, if you were to hop in a hot shower for 5 minutes or whatever it is, and then switch on cold could we get away with 30 seconds as a start? Or do you need a minute or 2 minutes, or what would it be?
You absolutely can. So this was actually only done recently as well. So if you do, there doesn't seem to be any difference between the benefit for doing a 30-second cold shot and a 90-second cold shot.
News in my ears.
Absolutely. Now, there's a vast difference between cold shower and full immersion.
Right.
So you're not going to get, like, what they can prove, I suppose, scientifically from cold showers is that it lifts your mood. You know, you might have less sick days, but the same sort of physiological benefits. It's really hard one to quantify anyway, because, you know, the water, it's a shower, like it'd be a very hard one to test for. But definitely once you're doing your 30 seconds, I guarantee you what you'll find if you started, Sean, is that when you hit the 30 seconds, because you're competitive, you'll be like, oh, I'll go to 40. And then next of all, it's 2 minutes.
Right.
And I couldn't finish a shower hot now. Like, just
straight in cold shower.
No, I started hot.
Oh, started hot.
I couldn't get out of the shower now with it hot, because I wouldn't feel right. It would just feel really, really strange.
The few times I've done it, it's kind of like if I hopped into a sauna and afterwards I do the big deep breaths and stuff like that, try to brace myself to do it and try and just, I don't know, to me, if I do big deep breaths in and out, I heard it's good just to manage staying there longer. Like it's ridiculous. But you do nasal breathing in the ice baths and stuff. So like, I'm trying to think of a better way to articulate why than why.
Basically, nasal breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system. So when you get into the ice bath, your body has gone directly to fight or flight, your sympathetic nervous system. So everything is, it's panic, you're shutting down, all the rest of it. There's a kind of a really good balance struck between your sympathetic and your parasympathetic when you're in the ice bath. It is actually really interesting because, if they're working like anything, if they're working together well, everything runs brilliantly in your body. If you're in the ice bath and you're doing, say, hyperventilation breathing, as you'd see a lot of people do the first time they get in there, they're freaking out. Like, that is doing
my electric shower cut out for about 2 seconds the other day, and I started hyperventilating.
That kind of breathing is using up all your oxygen, and it's continuing to tell your brain we're in trouble here. Like, this is not going well. So if you can switch to nasal breathing, all you're doing is telling your body you're fine, everything's grand, you're not going to die.
It's one of those things that a lot of people, like, I know, sure, and this is no scientific fact. I just go back 2 times when people started having panic attacks that have been witness to, and it's all about the breathing. It's all about the breathing. Wim Hof is one that is all about the breathing. Is that something you've looked into as part of this? Is it something you've given a go? But it's something, they call him the Iceman, and anytime someone thinks about getting in cold water, they're always like, oh, Wim Hof method, Wim. Is it something that you've learned from that? Is there science to it, or is it just a general, we all have this power to control our own physiology of what we're feeling and what we're thinking, and through nasal breathing, through everything? Is there some science to what he's doing, or is it just science in general that we all have power to access?
There's definitely science to what he's doing. I think for a long time, because his personality is so out there, it was kind of he's a bit too extreme. But actually, he's a gas character. And I've done his course with Maria from Breathewell, actually, and I give her a shout out because it was absolutely fab. It was up in like the mountains. It was just this beautiful setting, and the breath work is the whole session. So the ice bath piece of it, like the cold water therapy part of it, was only the last kind of half an hour. So there was really so much focus on learning how to breathe, learning how, like you're saying, Eric, like learning how to control, and really when you think of the resilience piece, that's what it's all about. Like you are just trying to tell your body and train your mind to control what's happening. And there's tons of scientific research to back that up. Now, on the breathing side, like his hyperventilating breathing, it's good, but there's other types of breathing that are more effective. So I don't know if you guys would follow Huberman Lab. You know him? He's
Yeah.
So he does the psychological side, which is really good in stressful situations. And then there's like a version of Wim Hof that is less extreme, because you really don't want to feel lightheaded. You don't want to get to that stage where you're depriving yourself too much, especially nowhere near water, certainly.
Yeah.
But there's another Irish guy, actually, the Oxygen Advantage, Peter McKeown.
Haven't heard of him yet, no.
No, haven't heard.
His one is brilliant because he's a huge nasal breather advocate in every way. Like none of us should mouth breathe ever, according to him. But his science is really interesting as well. So I think with the breath work, there's a few different ones. Wim is definitely good, but I think you probably need to find the one that suits your kind of, you know what I mean? Like,
it's different for different people.
Me personally, it's not the kind of way I'd like to do it, but play around with them and you'll find something.
And it's one of the things as well, like essentially you've hit all the keywords that people are dealing with on a daily basis. And one of them is resilience and one of them is stress. And regardless, you're exposing yourself to something that me and Sean are definitely not comfortable with. That's going to set up, we've talked about the two systems, the nervous systems that are going to work hard for you. Then you're talking about breathing through them. So you've exposed your body to maximum stress in an instant, maximum stress. You're learning how to cope with stress. You're breathing through the problems. You're developing mental resilience. You're getting endorphins. You're feeling better about yourself. Your confidence is increasing. And if anything else, we always say as well with the running, as long as that's making you feel good and there's progress there, science is irrelevant. As long as you're feeling the progress there, you're able to deal with the fires that everyday life throws at you. Like you said, you've 3 kids and you're climbing into the bath every morning. And some people would be like, no, the 3 kids is enough trouble for one day, to be honest.
I'm climbing into the bath because I have the 3 kids.
But it is something that can develop a resilience, develop a certain level of toughness, no matter what your background, to be able to cope with everything that the world is throwing at you, with social media, with everything pointing to stress. And everyone's wearing a device now that tells you how stressed you are and how much sleep you've had. And it sounds absolutely amazing.
And actually on the device side, so one of the really cool things, when you post actually brilliant stuff on your stories. I was like, I must ask him now exactly how he's doing his running training. But I've done it where I've timed it from when I got into the bath, and you watch the heart rate come down. Like it's spiking at, whatever my max is. And then as soon as you start doing that breathing, and watch it come down. Like there's such a feeling of satisfaction in that. Like the water isn't getting any warmer. Nothing's getting better here. I am the one that's saying, this is okay. I'm controlling this moment. And,
we had the heart rate monitor on. I left my heart rate on when I got into the water in the Shannon that time. Now I was not a brave person. Let's just say there's many words I would use to describe myself in that first 30 seconds, 2 minutes even. And brave was not one. But the spike, in the hardest sprint would not go above 190 beats per minute. But in the first 30 seconds in the water, I had a heart rate of 196. And that, if it can explain to people the spike in an instant of heart rate, of fear, of the body trying to get me to do something other than what I was doing, by the end of it, even though I was still under a lot of pressure, we were back down to the 140. So I wasn't breathing. I was starting to just relax. I wasn't following a technique, but I was terrified at how high my heart rate went in an instant. And it was just the body. It wasn't anything. It wasn't hard work. All I had to do was sit down. It was just the body trying to do its thing. It was those systems trying to get me out of danger.
Absolutely. That's your cold shock response. And then everything. So all the blood is rushing to all your vital organs then. So you're sitting in there, you're getting colder and colder because your extremities are just losing every bit of blood. And, if you ever see, I probably shouldn't mention his name, although would you care? Oshin?
Yes.
So when he does his heart monitor in the ice bath, now he's ludicrously fit. He can bring his heart rate down to 40.
Oh my God.
I mean, he is a machine. I've never seen any. I could be in it for the next 50 years and not in a million years could I get my heart rate down to that.
And look, fitness will play, but to have that control, I suppose, is what we're showing, whatever your sleeping heart rate is, to be able to get back to that in that cold water sense is a fantastic achievement in itself, to be that relaxed. It's absolutely amazing. And like you said, there's a lot of talk for mental health and well-being. And I know my brother's got involved with groups. There's a lot of groups out there getting involved. But what you do is you take the fear out of getting into the sea, out of it, and you put this challenge into the back garden. Isn't that right?
Yeah. And that's how it started for me. So I used to go to the 40 foot, I'd say 3 times a week. I mean, and that's like a half an hour drive, an hour round trip just to get my hit. Like I felt like an addict. I was like, I just have to do it so I feel better. And then I was like,
have you got a euro for a nice bath?
So having it in the garden, there's so little maintenance to it. It's all you have to do is empty it and fill it, once every kind of week and a half, depending on how clean you keep it. And that's it. And it's there for life. It's not a piece of kit that you ever have to invest in again.
And this is your company. If you want to tell us about it, look, you've given us so much information, and there is so much more we haven't tapped into. We're not going to finish yet. You're not getting if you do want to, because obviously our listeners are big into sport, they're big into recovery, they're big into the competitive edge, or doing anything that you can to just try and feel better about what it is you're doing as amateur athletes or some better. What is it you do in terms of your company, and what can you do for our listeners?
So we retail ice baths and sauna blankets. So we just want to have products that are portable, easy to use, affordable, that are in your home and provide you with, really just so many benefits. We haven't even talked about half the stuff that it does. But if you can use heat and cold, and it's not just in the recovery sense, like you were saying it there, most of our customers actually buy them for mental health. There's so many people, and a lot of men, like, it really surprised me, and who will, because they're really, when you get into that kind of community, they'll send you a DM or they'll send a message or a video or whatever, really just what a difference it's made, to them, to their everyday kind of life. And then you have, people who have things like autoimmune issues and inflammatory, and so many people with inflammatory disorders, just because the way we live, the stress, our diet, all the rest of it. If you're doing some form of cold and heat therapy, you're making huge improvements and stuff like that. So we retail those on the website. By this summer, I'll have done a breathwork course, now that you've said it. It does go kind of hand in hand with it,
Yeah, definitely. And it's one thing Lorcan was screaming at me, was just breathe. And I was like...
I forgot how to...
Yeah. And that's something you'll be helping people along with, because as you said, it's very much hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like, I'm so into it, you have to be passionate about the stuff that you're, what you're working on, so I would love nothing more than telling people about this all day.
And this thermal blankets, I've never heard of them. I've heard of saunas, I've heard of steam rooms, I've even seen the inflatable legs that help recovery. What is the thermal blanket size? I'm genuinely asking, I've no idea.
So they're infrared sauna blankets. So basically using just infrared technology to heat your body. It's like a giant sleeping bag. So all you have to do is plug it in. It goes to 80 degrees. You can set your temperature. You can set your timer. So like I've always said, and we didn't really talk about it yet, but like for cold or heat therapy, don't be looking at what people on Instagram are at. You don't need to go hell for leather with like really intense temperatures to get the benefit from these things. So being able to control the temperature, like if you walk into a sauna, that's it. It's 80, sometimes 100 degrees when you go in. And some people just can't tolerate that level of heat. So if you can gradually build it up at your own pace, is another way to do it. And like, it has so many benefits, particularly for anything cardiovascular. So, the studies that they've done on it now bring down, heart failure fatalities, blood clots, dementia. Like, there's so much about, those neurological disorders now. They're becoming more and more, I was going to say popular.
Yeah,
but that's definitely
they're prevalent now in society.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Everyone is looking to find the next way to therapeutically solve the problems without going medically, if that's essentially it. And everyone will do anything to take a vitamin or get into the ice bath, essentially, as long as you have the confidence to try something new.
100%. And like that confidence thing, that totally changed. When you're saying there about training and stuff, like or having like that edge. So when I started doing the cold therapy properly, I would say, as in like going to do sea swims and going in the ice bath or whatever, those training sessions I do like for strength. And I'm only small, like I'm not lifting like heavy weight or anything, but the confidence, like you just feel, when you're doing a rep and you're like, well, I've done that. Like I might have already been in the ice bath. It's not going to be ridiculously hard now. I can do difficult things. I'm not going to tell myself anymore that I'm not capable of doing, So I think from a mental perspective, it really does something to your confidence. Like,
And that's that resilience. That's that. What's another rep? I've already been in there for 10 minutes. You know, like it's that another rep will actually might heat me up a little bit. You know, like it's taking that negative, putting a positive spin on it, and developing that resilience and that mentality, that rock solid mentality. It's absolutely brilliant.
Same when you're on your long runs. You know, you hit that wall, and you're like, no, I can do it. I can do another kilometer. It's in me.
Yeah.
So how cold is cold? Or is that depending on the person? Like, you're talking there something about like Instagram, and obviously people do things for likes and stuff. So they throw, you know, bags of ice, bags of ice, bags of ice, and somehow they're in front of a mountain with snow and stuff. It's like, that's the only way to do it. Like, but realistically, is there a point where it's this is cold enough, or is it when you feel cold? Or
there is actually so now it's confirmed, once it's under 15 degrees Celsius is considered cold therapy. So you don't need to be in single digits. Now you kind of go into a space then where it's you're probably in the bath longer. First of all, if you're going to, you know, anywhere from 10 to 15, you probably need to be sitting in the bath for about 8 minutes, I'd say, to get the full benefit of it. But the colder it is, the faster it obviously happens. Yeah. But then I think you start to build up your tolerance for it, like you said. So now my minimum would be 5 minutes, just because I feel like, well, I know I can do it. So now I'm never going to go less than that, you know. So it's not, it does depend.
We've seen you use the thermometer as well. So you mentally, you know, you can get that mental model straight away of like, no, I've been here before. It's 9 degrees. I've done 7. It was December. I did 1. I smashed the ice before I get in. So it's the same way as we use the Garmin. I've ran at a 440. I've done it. It's the same mental stamina you're building each time. And like, no, I can do this. And I did 5 minutes at colder, so maybe I'll stay till 8. And, you know, naturally you're starting to get those benefits, even though the water is heating up.
Yeah, 100%. And there is a bit of a technique to it when you start doing it, because when you sit into it, you know, if you're rigid, if you're sat there and your body is you're just like, okay, get it over with, counting the seconds, your body's going to start heating up the water around you. So when you're in it, you should aim to have like a gentle movement going. So, you know, so moving your legs a little bit, moving your hands a little bit, because you want that water, the same temperature water, to circulate around your body the whole time. You want to keep your shoulders under, you want to keep your hands under. If you're...
And this is one of the things.
Moving will make the water colder?
As in, it's not giving it a chance
as cold?
Yeah, because it'll heat up.
I'm never going to do that. So, warm up.
Yeah, Sean turns into a brick in any water he goes into. But I've heard that, and it's the same with survival techniques. You'll bunch together and hug each other, because water will create a layer on you, whether you think it or not. It'll create a thermal layer on you. It'll like that water that's that much away, like that 1 millimeter away, will start to heat up. Whereas if you can keep water moving and circulating, you're not giving it that chance to heat, so you're keeping it. But how do you get your hands in the water without crying? That is the $1 million question.
Yeah. I cried in the bath yet? I haven't. I've cried training.
I will. I'm 6'4" and I'll admit I nearly cried in the Shannon. I put them in for 3 seconds and they were straight back out above my head. It was, there is a sting, like it like,
it smacks. Yeah.
Like I don't know, like my extremities are a lot longer than some other extremities, but the blood disappeared. It said, no, we're out, and pins and needles was all that remained.
Yeah.
But how do you get out? What are your tips and tricks for someone like me who's going to take this up, but I'm afraid to get the hands in because it stings? What are the tips and tricks? Is it to just relax, keep them moving, focus on the flow of the water?
Honestly, Eric, I don't go in the sea in the winter without my gloves, and I love getting cold. So boots and gloves, if you're a sea swimmer, are an absolute must, I think, because you want to be able to stay in the water for longer. So if that's what's, you know, and even wear a hat, you know, it's not
the neoprene hats,
like it's not that your hands or feet necessarily have to get cold, you know, it's just your body. So it's just your core temperature coming down. So I would definitely I'd start off with your cold showers if you've never done it before. build up to it. And then don't start in the winter. Obviously, we're coming into the summer now.
Well, I have to now because Logan Fisher did it Christmas Day. You're golden.
Oh, I'm one of those losers. I've done that. Although we do that on Christmas Eve. It's so sad, but you're like, I've done it. I got in the water on Christmas Eve. And Jay actually did it with me one year. Oh my God, I never forget it. You think you were about to cry. I never, ever saw him as stressed. He was like a dog learning to swim. He got in and then he was like, what have I done? It's straight out.
Yeah, and that's a man who can handle a lot of stress. So I very much share his pain at this moment in time. But it even shows those who can handle stress and so many other factors. Like Sean's going to do a 24-hour race and people are like, that is bizarre. But Sean won't get in the water for 10 seconds and neither will I,
right.
you know. Like,
yeah.
And you know that I really thought, because you're endurance athletes, like I really thought that would be so up your alley because it's a mental game. You know, it really is.
It hurts us that we're not afraid to admit it, that we're afraid.
I have gone into the sea in Hoth in the summertime, all the way up to my ankles, and be like, no, get me out here. Too cold. And that is a straight up shoot. Like, that's the true story. The middle of August in the sea, and I'm looking around going, how are people doing this? And just the ankles are gone. When you're in the ice bath, I assume at some stage you start to shiver. Is that a sign that you need to keep going? And I don't know, for lack of a better term, toughen up and go with it? Or is that a sign, okay, you've gone too long to get out? Or does that mean anything at all? It's just you need to work more on your breathing?
No, you're bang on. There's like a sequence of there's a timeline for when you're in the bath.
Okay.
Or in any cold water. So those kind of first 10 to a minute, say, that's when you're in your fight or flight. You know, your adrenaline, your cortisol is up. When you're about a minute in is when your breathing starts to stabilize. So that's when you start to calm down a little bit. So if you can get over that initial hump, you're like, I can do anything for a minute.
You've never held a plank for a minute.
Then when you get over that, if you can hit like at 3 minutes is when your body will start to shiver. But then again, I know I keep saying about the nasal breathing, but you want to start doing it. Like, it's good that your body is shivering. It's supposed to shiver. It's not a sign that you should wrap it up, but you definitely shouldn't go past where you feel uncomfortable, you know. So that'll depend on your own body, but in or around 3 minutes, depending on the temperature, is when you will start to shiver. I would say no matter the temperature, cap it at 10 minutes. Like and I've done it myself. I've stayed in longer than 10 minutes myself. With, you know, a challenge with another guy, you know, the ego thing comes in and you're like, no, I can do it. I know I can do it. You do not need to do it. Nothing extra is going to happen for you. You know, cap it at 10. That's it. Done, dusted. And what you don't want to do is stay in. So genetically, some of us will have more brown fat than others. So I might be able to, you could tolerate more cold than me, say. So it would be foolish, me and you going in the bath at the same time, thinking that I can last longer than you, you know? Yeah. So know your boundaries. Like Eric, you were saying about the thermometer, like that's very much my gauge. Then I know, okay, I'm used to this temperature. I've built up to this. I know that I'm not going to go past a certain number of minutes, you know? So just build it up.
And even it can be humbling. Sorry, Sean, it can be humbling as well. Just it was thought that, as you said, that don't compete with anyone else. The only competition, and we always say, is the only competition is yourself, no matter what it is. And it's a good way of humbling you to say, listen, this is just me versus ice. Yeah. And that's it. Forget about John doing 10 minutes. This is me versus the ice.
100%. Absolutely. And like once you're in it for, I think anything up to 3 minutes, you know, that is serious stuff. Like, I mean, it's the longest 3 minutes you'll ever do is sitting in there. I mean, you have literally nothing else to do. It's so different to sea swim, you know, at least in the sea, you're probably chatting with your friends or moving around a bit. You know, it can be tough, like, but don't lose heart if you feel like, and as well, if you get out and you've that cold in your core for too long after, you've definitely stayed too long. So just like anything, build it up slowly but surely.
You defrost in the car on the way to work.
And people forget, you know, if you watch the reels, I do this at the end. It's the Wim Hof horse stance. like you have to have some form of movement, whatever it is. I remember seeing only men actually ever at the 40 foot doing these these dances, and I was like, what are they at? But they were so right, like, because people get out and they're going straight for all the clothes, having a hot cup of tea, and then they're driving home and they're rigid with the cold. You just have to use movement. You want to get all that blood flowing back into your limbs and then get dressed and, you know, go about your day.
I'm going to pay good money to go up to the 40 foot and watch Sean do the dance.
I'll start doing the haka and everything at the end of it.
That's your challenge now, Sean. You have to accept it.
Learn the haka. So 3 minutes daily, or is it a couple of times a week?
Oh, 11 minutes a week. Yeah.
11 minutes
over 3 or 4, 2 or 3, however many sessions you want, but, you know, don't do 11 in one go. Go 2 or 3 at a minimum over the week. And
when you put it like that, it sounds so achievable.
Yeah. And like, honestly, do it with the showers first. I know there's a difference between showers and full immersion, but if you feel like the showers are going well for you, then maybe you want to think about, you know, investing in a bath or something.
Yeah, it's when you put like 11 minutes on now, that's got the competitive edge.
Yeah, I'm like, surely I could do 11 minutes over 7 days. I mean, there's 168 hours in a week. Surely I could last.
Unless you're talking to Lorcan and he says the only standard is 10 minutes. So I don't think he did 11
Ironmans or something, did he?
Yeah, so this is what we're trying to compete with now. This is why we need to get lesser guests onto the podcast than you and Lorcan, to be honest.
This is where we completely undo ourselves. Like 1 minute we say the right thing, it's you versus you and stuff like that, and then you hear the only standard is 10 minutes. You're like, well, God damn it, I'm jumping in for 10 minutes and I'm gonna keep moving. I'm gonna do the haka afterwards. I'm gonna absolutely own
it. Do you know, actually, one other thing you could do to start is just put your hands in ice water. So don't bother with the full immersion. So they're on the backs of your hands and feet are the glabrous, what do they call it? Cells. So they're more susceptible to cold and heat. So if you put your hands or your feet into a bowl of icy water, that's another way of doing cold therapy without having to be fully immersed. So you could start with that.
I just imagine Sean with a little basin or a mixing bowl with his hands and feet tucked into it there, mixing around.
It'd be Monday morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. Everyone's sleeping. I'll put my hands in the thing. Jesus! Hey, well, what's wrong with you? I'll put my hands in cold water. You idiot.
But yeah, it's definitely something that got me thinking about it. But like that, a sea swim. Okay, if you live in Hout, it's great. It's a walk down the hill. It's, you know, it's something that's achievable. There's Skerries or you're coastal. But if you have to drive an hour, it's no longer, you're going that once a week to get in for your 10 minutes or your 11 minutes for your weekly hit. But having it in the back garden, it looks at you and it speaks to you and it's like, come on in, you know, like maybe not 100%. That inviting, more so scream at me and Sean, but when it's there, it's doable. It's that immersive effect is essentially in your house or in your back garden.
Absolutely. And start looking at it like, I know it's overdone, but like as a self-care kind of a thing, you know, like just don't see it as hardship and, you know, you're psyching yourself up to get in. Just see it as something as the end, you know, think of the end goal. And
that's, it's one thing I've done. Obviously the 75-day challenge still on goes. And some days I'm feeling sorry for myself, but I'll still go for the walk or still do yoga. But it's all about doing something that's progressing you. And that's the idea behind it. It's if you're even just getting in for 2 minutes, that's 2 more minutes than looking at it. You know, you've immersed yourself. You're going to get some sort of benefit. And like we've talked, I don't know how many benefits we could list off 10. You've a boosted immune function, improved sleep, mood is better, your better well-being, metabolism's getting better, you're burning more calories, your circulation's getting better. You're like, it's just endless. What, 2 minutes? 5 days a week, then we just have to do a Saturday 1 minute and we're there. We've hit 11 minutes.
Absolutely, 100%. And you're so right, because you don't need to go for long. Like, don't, like you said, don't be looking at other people, what they're doing, what temperature it is, how much ice is in it. Like, it is just something that you're doing for you that's going to give you all those benefits for very, very little. Like, you don't have to go to the gym and bang out 4 rounds of 15 reps. Like, this is literally 5 minutes of your time.
And it's, I think what's probably hard for people to grasp when we talk about all these benefits, you don't see them. You don't see the muscles in the mirror. You don't see the increased circulation. You don't see your metabolism. But that's the most important part of longevity, of health, is the parts you're not seeing. It's the cell function. It's the mood, even how much your mood can affect the cells in your body. And I think that's where people kind of struggle. They see hardship, but they don't see results. Yeah. Although, yes, you do feel better when you commit to it. But and that's one thing about it, is trying to commit to what's coming out as now formative science, and we're starting to see more studies in it. And people will throw a lot of money at this kind of things without science. And it's like, when you talk about all these benefits, you're kind of like, why am I not doing it? You have to kind of have that mindset of, I'm silly if I don't do this, because the unseen benefits to this for me is fantastic.
Absolutely. And we're lucky in Ireland because the temperatures, well, we're lucky and we're not lucky.
I was like, where are you going with this?
Yeah. The one good thing about living in Ireland is you don't have to add any ice to it, so you don't need like a cold plunge where there's a big cooler attached to it, because especially if you're doing it in the morning, because it's going to be absolutely Baltic. Like, most of the year round, it's about 8 degrees. So, in terms of trying to add something into your routine, you don't have to have loads of ice in the freezer, even coming into summer, because.
And that's
the garden hose, and away you go.
Exactly. Like, just throw the hose in, done.
And it's also the extra encouragement to get you up early, because one of the biggest problems I have is getting out of that bed. But obviously, if for the benefit, half hour after sunrise, that's the coldest point of the day. If you're meeting that sunrise in the bath, you're getting the benefits of not having to put the ice into it. You're up, you're awake. You've now got 2 hours to you before work starts, and everyone else gets a piece of you. It's great all around.
And if you're lucky enough that you get the sun in your back garden or wherever you have your bath, then you also have, that morning sunlight, which they're saying now is like a huge thing to have to get your circadian rhythm even right, to benefit your sleep. So you could be ticking off 2 things in the morning if you can manage to do it that way. Like,
and it's one thing as well, we've noticed through our years of failed training people, because we're experts, but when people put money where their mouths are, essentially, when people purchase something, they want value for money out of it. So it will encourage them to get up, because they're like, I paid for this bat, I'm getting into this bat, and it is one thing that I've noticed with people. It's crazy. Once they kind of invest in it, it's the gym membership that's in your back garden. And instead of buying the vitamins, get in the bath for 2 minutes, and it's fantastic when you can string all these together and package it. It's absolutely brilliant. I'm convinced-ish to maybe turn down the notch on the shower.
But the shower can be a bit more aggressive. So if the shower isn't your bag, don't dismiss getting in the bath, because the water coming at you, it can be a bit.
Yeah, and that's for me. It's the head gets cold. That's the nastiest part of it. It's because it's hitting the head first. Whereas if I take cold showers, usually I just let it hit my back. So I'd probably be one. Now everyone is different. I'd probably be one that would prefer to just commit to a plunge and just hold on for dear life and try and relax. I think I'd better able to that in the cold showers.
So, Karen, if we are sold, or someone listening is sold, where can they get one of your bats? Where's the best place to go?
So DM anytime on Instagram, but we're at Sealieve.ie. So Sealieve.ie.
Sealieve.ie.
Yeah.
And
then follow me on Instagram, please.
And what we'll do, Karen, is in the show notes, if anyone didn't get that, we'll put all Karen's details into the show notes and the link to the Instagram. Brilliant. She'll also be collaborated on any of our posts, so you should have easy access to all of the information. It is, I've no doubt, me and Sean are going to take a plunge very soon.
Yes.
And we may have to get you back on in a couple of weeks to either give abuse or thank you, one or the other.
It could be both.
It could be both. But To be honest, we're
do
so
an Insta live from our garden. The two of you getting in.
You know, wrap it up, Eric. Force gets more mad ideas. Wrap it up quick.
You seem to have bad signal at the minute, and Karen. But, no, it's we've talked about it, we've bluffed about it, we've looked into it, but it's been absolutely fabulous to have you on and kindly and nicely clarify some of the things we've had on our minds about is this real or is it not real, and being able to talk so greatly about it and weirdly reassure me about getting into cold water. I didn't like Lorcan's approach. It was like a dad teaching his kid to swim. Get in, will you?
Just grabbing you, chucking you in.
No, it's absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much for coming on, and I'm sure we're going to get lots of follow-up questions. So hopefully, if we do progress into the bats, we might get you back on, if that's okay.
I just trying to hear. Please video it. Whatever you do, take a video.
I'm doing the next marathon, so Sean can take the next.
No, right. Wrap it up, Eric. Wrap it up.
Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure. Honestly, you're so good.
Karen, thank you very much. And guys, thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of the Any Given Monday podcast. That's it from Karen, myself, and Eric. Take care.
Bye.